Hello fellow coffee botherers, in this video we're diving back into simplifying making espresso at home. In this video I talked about how to simplify home espresso making by widening the shot window and dialing in more by taste. In this video I spoke about how to react to the way espresso tastes. In this video I spoke about dose, and now I'm going to be talking about what is possibly one of the biggest hacks to dialing in espresso. Okay, some will say this isn't really a hack, and I'd agree, but it's definitely one of the most overlooked aspects of dialing in, especially for beginner home baristas. What I'm talking about is ratio. Most beginner home baristas are aware of ratio, but they're usually not aware of how it can be tweaked to balance under or over extraction. One of the problems with making espresso at home is that most of us are trying to do something that professionals spend ages learning to do and spend hours and hours doing 5 or 6 days a week for years. And then we try and follow a very similar process, usually using much different gear, and we wonder why we struggle. Everything I've spoken about recently in these simplifying home espresso videos have been about doing things slightly differently to take this fact into account, and this I think will be the final piece of the puzzle for some people for making it much easier to get great results. The ratio is the wet weight or volume of espresso versus the dry weight of ground coffee. So for example, 36 grams or 36 ml, about the same, of espresso from 18 grams of ground coffee is a 1:2 extraction. Most people watching this, when they hear the word ratio, will instantly think 1:2, as this is a most commonly discussed ratio. And this is the problem, because ratio isn't a one-size-fits-all thing. If you're working with a really high-level setup and you've been home barista-ing for a while, you might be able to get great results at any ratio. If you're using an entry-level setup, and especially if you're just getting into home espresso, you'll probably find the dialing in process much easier once you see ratio as another tool for dialing in. Just to add, before I talk about how to do this, the choice of coffee is also an important consideration. I've said this in various other videos, so I might sound a little bit like a broken record, but one of the most common things I find is that people who are new to home espresso, who have entry-level setups, are trying to use beans that are tricky to work with. I'd highly recommend that you start out with espresso blends. They're a lot more forgiving for beginner skills and entry-level gear. If you're using, for example, lighter roasted single origins, you're far more likely to struggle than you will if you're using a medium dark to dark roasted espresso blend. So with that said, how do we use ratio when it comes to dialing in? This is really simple. If it tastes sour, increase the yield. If it tastes bitter, decrease the yield. Just a quick note on this: if you're using a machine that has a timed or volumetric shot button, such as the Sage or Breville machines, then you'll need to pull the shot manually or semi-manually in order to control the yield. Most espresso machines that have shot buttons also have a manual shot option. With Sage machines, it's just a case of pressing and holding the shot button for as long as you want pre-infusion to last. Default is about 7 seconds. Taking your finger off the shot button to allow the pressure to ramp up, and then pressing the shot button again when you've got the target yield. The semi-manual method is simply a case of setting the shot time or volume to the max, or at least more than you're likely to want, and then press the shot button to start and stop it when you've got the desired yield. Yield being the amount of espresso, and by keeping the dose the same and changing the yield, we adjust the ratio. What we're looking for in the shot is balance, and the easiest way to tip the balance is with ratio. So if you start out at 1:2 and it tastes sour, up the ratio to 1:2.5. So for example, 45 ml of espresso from 18 grams of coffee. Doing this one small, simple tweak could be all you need to get a more balanced shot versus wasting most of a 250 gram bag and half a morning playing around with grind size. You can even preempt the ratio by the kind of coffee you're using. If you're using an espresso blend, I'd recommend starting at 1:2. If you're using a single origin, however, especially if it's a bit on the lighter side in terms of roast, you'll probably find 1:2.5 or 1:3 produces a more balanced espresso. I'm not saying you should purely dial in with ratio, but often it can be the simplest way to make the biggest difference to the shot, and it's something that most people tend to overlook. So just try adding this to your workflow instead of reaching for the grind adjustment every time you think the shot tastes under or over extracted. Just adjust the ratio accordingly. If it tastes sour, increase the yield a bit and see what you think. If it tastes too bitter, decrease the yield a bit. Thank you very much for watching, and if you've enjoyed this video, why not click here to watch another one, and please click the like button. The world's largest waterfall is underwater, which has nothing to do with clicking the like button, but click the like button if you like water, remembering that water is a main ingredient in coffee. And don't forget, to become an official coffee botherer, you need to click this image around here somewhere of my face to subscribe. Tatty Bye.